really impress somebody nowadays because there's so much music, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the deluge of CDs and downloaded music and everything else. So, when you hear something more than once, it's sort of a rarity anymore, unless if it's something that you've been listening to all your life. But I can't really see anybody anymore. But how many of you still have a CD player? A couple of you. Okay, well that's good news. How many of you still have a record player? All right, that's great news. How many of you still have an 8-track player? They didn't last very long. Anybody have a reel-to-reel player? Okay. Well, I just wanted to, before we introduce our program and turn the mic over to Greg, I wanted to just give a little history or an overview of recorded music because it's something I've been into for a very long time. When I listened to Greg's CD, and it was a CD that I listened to, I was so impressed. I said, people need to hear this. We have to make sure that at least we can do whatever we can to make sure that people have an opportunity to hear it. And what better place to do that than the Mainstay, a place that Greg is very familiar with from playing here many times. So I started thinking, how was this album recorded? And he's going to tell you all about that. But they had techniques for recording live music in studios that really has a sound of its own. I guess they would call it like close miking the instruments and then recording it without overdubs and things of that sort. So I said, how did recorded music even get started? Because it's a record of what you've done. Is this a record release, or is this a CD release, or is it album release? What are we going to call this thing? So, what's that? Oh, I'm going to say it's a record release because it's a record of what Greg has put a lot of time and thought and effort and even expense into doing. And it exists now. And I said, well, what the heck is this that he's holding in his hand? This actually goes with a Regina music box that goes back to the 1890s, the first recorded music player made in the United States. And this is the first recording of Stephen Foster's My Old Kentucky Home. And it was mass produced on these metal plates. And the way it used to work is, you could not hear the artist actually perform a particular song, but what you could do is have somebody punch out the melody on one of these plates. And as it goes around, it plucks the comb pieces, what do you call them?
Oh, stamper, that is.
Stamper? Okay. So the stamper goes around, this goes around and plucks the comb. And then they got harmony notes and everything. They really got pretty good as they were going. But then Edison, of course, came along, and you've got your phonograph. And now, for the first time, you were able to listen to actual artists performing their music. As scratchy as it was something that people had not heard before. I actually brought a sample of one of those. You all know what a 78 record looks like, but they were made out of wax, and that happens to be one of Andres Segovia's. This is a wax recording. He was around for quite a long time, and when he got into recording music, he had to deal with these 78-speed records, and they were quite scratchy. They didn't have much fidelity, definitely nothing in the stereo department, but by the time he died, they were putting his music on CDs. And it just goes to show, technology had come so far so fast. And the mass production of this music is the reason that we know and love so many songs now. Because otherwise, there wouldn't have been any way to hear them between the radio, the phonograph, the reel-to-reel. We got a reel-to-reel tape over there, Greg? We got one of Charlie Bird's actual master tapes. I don't see Greg anymore. It's over there. We need Greg. Come on, Greg. You're almost up. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of preface Greg's production, just so we know, that he's coming to us with a lot of recorded history behind him, and moving into modern times with a sound that I think is very much vintage. And I'm sure you're all familiar with albums like Kind of Blue by Miles Davis or Take Five. Sure you are. But they stood out for some reason, and part of the reason that they stood out was because of the way they were recorded, in addition to the way they were arranged and performed. So I was so impressed with this album that I said, hey Greg, maybe we could debut this masterpiece, in my opinion, here in Rock Hall. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg right now. Okay, welcome. Greg Burrows.
Oopsie daisy.
It's not mine, is it?
Okay, that's mine, I guess.
There's a lot of music on
All this
on-
technology all over the place. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Mainstay, or if it's your first time, welcome to this amazing, wonderful room. And that was a great way to get started on this, Mark, because this is my official record release party, my record release, event. Thank you. And it's my second album, so, I'm a kind of a late bloomer to the world of being a band leader, putting out records. But, I've been a sideman all my life, meaning, I've been working for other people and enjoying that very much. But right around the age 50, somewhere in my mid-50s, I said, I want to just put out records and put out some music and, have a hand in that. And so I put out my first album in 2018 called Tell Your Story. And all the CD copies are gone, but it is out there on streaming and, YouTube and everywhere else. So the name of this new album is called Let's Not Wait, the music of Ed Bonoff. So Ed Bonoff is a dear friend of mine who I've known since high school. He's a couple decades older than me, and that's him there, actually. And he was the stepfather of, he still is, the stepfather of a couple of school colleagues of mine, Ted and Doug Chervin. And when we were in school, and I used to see those fellows in between classes, they used to pull me aside and say, my stepdad is having these jam sessions in the house. He had just moved in, and it was a new thing for them. And Ed Bonoff was doing these rehearsals, and a smoking jazz band were just blowing the roof off, with trombones and trumpets, clarinet, and playing, I think, a lot of sort of traditional style jazz at that point. But Ed was the drummer. I would occasionally go and listen, and little by little he would let me start to sit in and play with the band occasionally. But over the years, Ed has really developed a body of work as a composer and an arranger. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't know what an arranger is, by any chance? I don't see too many hands. So I think this is a pretty hip crowd, right? This is a fairly knowledgeable crowd. The reason I ask is that I have a friend, one of my best buddies is a trumpet player, Jamie Finnegan. And Jamie's dad was a great arranger. Bill Finnegan was an arranger with some of the great big bands of the swing era. So, Jamie had sort of a little bit of an older dad. And Bill Finnegan was really young when he started to work with Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey, if any of those names ring a bell for you. And Bill had a lot of good stories, but this was one of my favorites. He said that one day the Glenn Miller band was at the Glen Island Casino. They were playing there for a long residency, I believe, in New Rochelle, New York, which is actually where I grew up. So when we were kids, we used to see the old Glen Island Casino, you know, at Glen Island Park. But Bill said that one night, you know, after the band had finished and, you know, the radio broadcast was over and whatever, Bill was just on stage. Bill was on staff as an arranger. He wasn't in the band. He wasn't, you know, like doing any kind of labor for the band. He was an arranger. He was presenting the band with sheets of music and with new music to play and so on. So a fan, you know, a Bobby Soxer or whatever they called it in those days, came over to Bill and said, "So what do you do with the band?" And Bill said, "I'm one of the arrangers." And the person looked puzzled and they said, "Well, what do you arrange? Do you arrange the chairs on the stage?" And Bill sort of rolled his eyes and said, yeah, I arranged the chairs for the band. I guess he just didn't want to go into it. But in any case, so Ed Bonoff started to compose and arrange music, I guess throughout, I don't know exactly when he started, but he could have been in his 40s when he really went in it in earnest. He's now in his 90s, and he happens to be still very active, and he's very hungry. You know, one thing I love about him is that he's vitally, you know, involved in the music, and he wants to do more. And so when I told him I really want to record some of your music, I think it has been recorded, but I thought it's time for another one. It's time for one of your records to be out there, you know, playing, you know, in people's homes and on the radio. And he loved the idea. And so without going, you know, into all kinds of detail about that, I'm going to now play sort of a little mini documentary that I put together with a friend of mine where we talk to Ed and we talk about the project. And without further ado, here it is, a little mini movie on my project. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
This project was begun by Greg. Greg is a longtime friend and drummer, and he has been coming to my rehearsals for many, many years. And he told me, let's make a record with your music. And I was thrilled, and I said yes.
I've been connected in different ways to Edward Bonoff, we call him Ed, for, it could be 40-something years. And I've always been, you know, a longtime friend and a fan of his work. And it actually really crystallized, the idea for this recording crystallized during the great pandemic of 2020. You know, it was a terrible time, but it was also a time when a lot of us folks, you know, in the arts, kind of went inward. Suddenly we weren't playing with anybody, right? Suddenly we were on our, you know, left to our own devices. And I began to sort of plot out the goals, the next plan and the next road ahead. And one of the first ideas that came to me for the next record that I want to make, which will be my second as a leader, is an album dedicated to Ed Bonoff's compositions and arrangements.
We talked about who to use, and he got together the absolute best guys he could find. Now we're waiting for a Grammy.
I sort of had to make the decision of, you know, whether to use in the project some of Ed's regular guys in his weekly band and to pull in freelancers from the outside. And so I got a couple of name players on there too. And that would be Gary Smillian, the baritone sax player. Gary and everyone in this project are all leaders in their own rights. Everybody has produced albums and composed music. Next in line in the group we have Tim Armacost, who's quite possibly my favorite tenor saxophone player of all right now. You know, of all the living current active players. He's, as you'll hear on the record, he's terrific on soprano saxophone too. Following in the horn line would be John Fumasoli, the trombone player, who's a very active and notable band leader in the area north of New York City, running his own bands for quite some time, and he's a fantastic arranger and composer himself. And then on bass, a natural fit for this thing was Rich Zurkowski, who kind of gives the perfect combination of raw conviction as well as just being able to fit into the ensemble beautifully. And the final icing on the cake in the group is the amazing Hiroshi Yamazaki, a Westchester County-based piano player originally from Japan. I think he's been in the States for quite a long time. And he sort of brings in this combination of traditional bebop as well as kind of a lyrical sound that adds a nice contrast to some of the other sort of stronger, gutsier players in the group. And I'm the drummer, Greg Burrows.
I wrote 8 of the 10. One is by Duke Ellington, and the other selection is a medley of tunes by Billy Strayhorn and Duke Ellington, and the other 8 I wrote. And the Ellington ones I arranged. I came up listening to all kinds of jazz, and I'm influenced by all kinds of jazz. The closest I could come to describing this would be mainstream bebop.
I love all of the tunes. I'm actually really a fan of Ed's melody lines and compositions.
It's always great working with Greg. For one thing, Greg plays the room perfectly, doesn't overplay, and he knows my music, and it's just a good fit. You know, it's always a good fit with Greg.
There was a love thing going on from day one with this thing. We as soon as people showed up at Ed's house, I don't know. I can't put it any other way. It was a party. It was a love fest. You know, everyone was enjoying each other's playing. It was the first introduction to Ed's music for several of the guys.
To have a lovely ballad medley in the middle of a kind of a hardcore bebop session is very nice for a change of pace. So the Ellington Strayhorn medley fulfills that function.
We just recorded 10 of Ed's tunes, 8 of his own compositions, and 2, as mentioned, his arrangements of Ellington and Strayhorn. And now it's in the can.
My wife is totally supportive, and I can bang the shit out of the drums or the piano anytime almost, and she smiles at me.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the applause. Now, there was a 7th musician added to this thing, so we had 6 on the main project. How's our volume? Is everything good with like the music and the speaking volume? Not too loud, not too soft? Yeah, so we had a 7th cat added to this thing because the tune known as Shout 'em Aunt Tilly, which was a Duke Ellington masterpiece from 1930, it was needing something. I listened to it and it sounded great, but you know, I felt like another color or another solo was useful. So I kind of moved things around and did a little wizardry. The entire recording is completely natural, by the way. It's you know, there's no overdubbing. The whole thing is completely all of us playing all together. It's honest jazz, you know. There's no like we fixed a few little things. There were a few kind of sour notes, you know, that needed to be, but everything is raw and natural for the most part, 99%. And then I decided to add guitar on Shout 'em Aunt Tilly. And so I called in a dear friend of mine and a longtime friend. The name may be familiar to a few of you. His name is Al Orlo. I've brought Al here now 2 times for my soul jazz night here at the Mainstay over the summers. If anybody recalls, I did a couple of nights with a great vocalist named Vanice Thomas and Catherine Farmer before Vanice was available. And Al, was playing here at the Mainstay. And so, he also ended up on this recording. And so I think I'll play that tune now. How about that? And, we can talk about it. And then I believe there's a little pizza moment coming. Is there some appetite happening in this room? Some pizza? So, and cake. Oh my God. Julie made this incredible. Please, everybody, look at this cake. It's got, like a snare drum on it. It's a drummer's fantasy cake, okay? It's beautiful. And after, feasting our eyes, we can just devour it, hopefully, right? Yeah. So anyway, back to the music. Shout 'em Aunt Tilly is sort of, I guess, a little bit of a real African American feeling to the song. And I hey Dave, do you know we have a real expert in jazz here, Dave Robinson, who's a local fellow, fine musician and a scholar, a gentleman and a scholar too, radio host, band leader, et cetera, et cetera. I've had the good fortune of playing with him recently a few times, most memorably with his skiffle band out in the D.C. area at this, transmuted amusement park, Glen Echo. What a marvelous place. Does anybody know Glen Echo? Maybe from your youth or something? But he's got this skiffle band. This thing is a trip, Somebody's playing a jug. There's a jug player, I'm thinking of replacing my bass player with that. And a musical saw, like a really virtuosic musical saw player. And they invited me to play bones. I play a few like folk instrument kind of things, and I play bones. And we had a ball. We were so anyway. Duke Ellington, Shout 'em Aunt Tilly. Do you know, like, briefly a little background on that tune by any kind of rare chance?
No, I can't tell you what the title refers to.
I don't know what the title refers to either.
It's kind of a bluesy feeling, but it's not quite it's not a 12-bar blues form. And some of the trad bands around pick it up. In fact, I think my band will be playing it soon because our clarinet player took a shine to it. I used to teach it to my students at George Mason University. They played it. But, it's just a simple little tune, but it works. I'm interested to hear what you guys do with it.
Okay, so for the live stream, what Dave said that it's a kind of non-conventional form, meaning the blues is typically 12 bars long, repeating. But Duke took liberties. Duke Ellington, did whatever he wanted to do, which is one reason he was such a masterful composer. That he was an artist really. Dave said his own band. I guess the Conservatory Classic Jazz Band, that one, is going to be playing this song, Shout 'em Aunt Tilly. So this is a Duke Ellington composition, like I said, from 1930, but arranged by my pal, Ed Bonoff. And then Ed did a pretty conventional treatment on it. He kind of did it pretty true to the original. I was the one who messed around with it. And at the first rehearsal, I almost did a rock beat on it. And, I thought it sounded pretty good. I come from that rock generation, and I grew up playing rock and roll. I'm not a purist kind of jazz player. I am now, really. Now I'm really a jazz player. But, when I was coming up, I was into, rock and roll. So, but I said, what do you think, Ed, that backbeat? And Ed kind of walked over to me and was like, nah. I said, well, that he's really the chief when it comes to those kind of decisions. So I scrubbed the backbeat, but what I did do is I played it with a New Orleans street beat flavor, a second line type rhythm, my own take on it. I do not claim authenticity, in One of these days, I'm going to go with Phil Dutton down to New Orleans. Philip is in the house tonight. Anybody know Phil here? Very fine local musician, and I play with Phil quite a bit, thankfully for me, gratefully. But so this is the Greg Burrows take on the New Orleans second line rhythm, with added guitar by Al Orlo. Gary Smollett. Thanks. So, yes.
I have to clarify, the head, the melody of the tune does not follow the 12-bar blues format, but then when it goes into the solos, that's 12-bar blues.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. So Dave says that the actual composition is not a 12-bar blues. Is it 10 bars long or longer? I don't know. We can figure that out. But
It's like 8 bars, but then
Okay.
there's a second little section
yeah,
added.
yeah. There's kind of an A section.
Just go into a 12-bar blues solo.
Okay, so Dave points out that it's a sort of a 8-bar melody with another section. But Ed's arrangement calls for, and maybe Duke did this too. The solos are blues. It is a blues form. Yeah. Now, speaking of, with Mark's original great introduction on recording and the history of recording and, the fascinating things that we can do in the recording studio. There was a piano player on this. There was piano. And my dear friend Hiroshi played beautiful piano on this thing. He's one of my favorite pianists, and he plays great solos all over this album. On this particular tune, I felt like it didn't really need piano, and I made a sort of a producer decision to scrub the piano. I talked about it with Hiroshi. He was okay with it, and brought in guitar. Because the reason I did that is having no piano. Did anyone notice that the whole song was very stark? There's like a lot of aggressive drums, and the bass is really playing hard, and the horn solos are really kind of stark. There isn't a lot of decoration and filler around. It's sort of a strong kind of thing. It fits with that beat, right? Because the New Orleans bands didn't march with a piano rolling on a float or something, right? This was horns and drums, and and then that guitar seems to allow the music to land. It's an acoustic guitar, so it lands kind of a little gently. And then that ending was Duke. The ending was just about exactly the way Duke Ellington did it. I kind of requested that. So there's the deal with Shout 'em Aunt Tilly. And by the way, this CD is available, and we got a bunch of copies for sale here. So please help yourself to purchasing a CD. I'm asking $15. If someone is broke or whatever, you can give me 10. If you feel like donating more, you can give me more than $15 if you feel like it, but I will sign all of them if you like. I think this is a good time. Hey, Mark, what do you think if anybody hungry? We can do a little pizza break now, right? I think the pizza has arrived, and we can take a pause for the cause, like an intermission. We have what? Oh, there is a bar, which you may have noticed if you came in the back way. So please, purchase a drink, go help yourself to the free pizza, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Opry, yeah, the Opry Saturday. That's sold out. Okay, Greg, take it away.
Thank you, Mark Einstein. It's kind of fun to tell people that I've received a lot of support and energy and inspiration from Einstein on this project. And it's true, it's not a lie. It's Mark Einstein. He's been terrific. Yeah, let's give him a little love. Mark puts a lot of energy into this place, and he's been doing like some of the booking and some of the promotion and a lot of it, and he's been just marvelous, and he's been so positive about this project as well, this recording of mine. It's nice to get this kind of positive energy back when you do a new project. Speaking of energy coming back, there have been some comments on the live stream on YouTube, and so far a couple have come in from the great bassist Max Murray, with whom I play quite a bit, and I play here quite a bit, regularly with the Dick Durham Trio, if that rings a bell for some of you. And Max is out on Kent Island, and a dear friend, and and a highly esteemed colleague. And Max was asking, he was saying, in the dealings with Ed Bonoff, the composer and the arranger, was there any sort of he was saying that if I have like reverence for Ed, which I do, was that kind of a little overwhelming at times? Like, did I feel as though I was under pressure, to produce something great, or was it stressful? Number one. And number two, were there any clashes, he was asking. And that's a great question, because that can happen with egos and with, a couple of the great musicians that I had in the band. Sometimes people have strong personalities. I gotta say, this whole thing was just harmonious, and it was love. Like I said in that original little mini documentary, everything was so smooth. It was incredible. And dealing with Ed was just smooth sailing, because if he had a suggestion or if he wanted a change in the music, I just went with it. He's the composer. So, if he wanted me to play a section quieter or change the feel or the rhythm of another part, I would just say, okay, you got it. It's his music, right? So, I didn't take any kind of, personal pain from anything like that. So I went along with just about all of Ed's, suggestions. And Ed was there during the recording too. So we recorded this thing in one afternoon. So that's pretty gargantuan. I mean, these are 10 tunes, and it was the whole band all together in one recording studio all at the same time. And, we did the whole thing in a day. And another little sort of horn thing was changed a few days later with John Fumasoli, the trombonist. But overall, this was a marathon session, and old school, like the old, for example, Blue Note Records, continues to release great music and great albums. Now, back in the 60s, they would make a record in 1 or 2 days, typically, and they would be rehearsed or not, or they would just be, reading it and playing the music for the first time, and put it down. But the musicians were so good, and they were so keyed in with each other. You had a great record in one day. I know, like in the world of pop music, for example, artists will commonly spend 3 months on a record. They'll spend months and months. They'll spend 3 weeks on a vocal, on 2 tunes or something. It's incredible. That's one reason I love the jazz thing. It's spontaneity, and it's in the moment. You play, and it's honest. It's some of the most honest music that I know. Blues and jazz are just honest expression. It helps to be good. I won't make that judgment. I hope I'm good. But, I know that one thing I do know is that I surround myself with good players and good musicians, and that really helps to lift everything up. So I'm going to go now and play another little, much shorter video that I made. This is my kind of social media attempt. So I made a 30-second video edit with the help of a tech buddy. And so we'll just play that little short Instagram video and then move on to another song. And I'm going to play maybe one or two more songs, and then we're going to go do some Q&A, some question and answer, if that's good for all you folks. Sounds good? All right. Tech support, tech support. Click the whole file. Yay. Yes, you do. And there it is. That's for the modern attention span. for what's left of the human attention span, poof, there it is. Now, did anybody notice to the right there was a fellow playing baritone saxophone? To the right, the sort of larger saxophone. His name is Gary Smulyan. I've been seeing Gary play much of my life. He was with the Mel Lewis Orchestra at the Village Vanguard, sort of a legendary aggregation. And I was so grateful to be able to get him to play on this thing. And, he's just he's reflective of the, the level that I had here. All the players were so good. And, it was exciting to be in the recording studio with people like that, I mean, I have a lot of recording experience, but he has way, if 10,000 hours of practice is mastery, he might have like 50,000 hours of experience, So, yeah. So, now where did I want to go from there? Yeah, Gary, okay. Lost my train of thought there, but that's okay. I can catch the next train, or another train. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to another tune, and talk a little bit about it, and we'll see where we go from there. But I'll give a little intro on this next tune. The title is in French. Again, another Ed Bonoff composition. And one thing I enjoy with working with Ed is his song titles are loads of fun. There's almost always some kind of a story behind it. There's some little anecdote or imagery. Or this song, Les Corbeaux de Chavignon, I'm not a French-speaking person ever, tells a story that Ed had something Ed remembered from a visit to France with his wife Elaine. They were in the French countryside, I don't know which part of France, visiting a sort of wine region and a wine cafe connected to a vineyard. And there happened to be a serious heat wave that particular time, that week or whatever. It was just oppressively hot and humid, and so, they decided to duck into this cafe and try the local wine, and they encountered something rather amusing. The owner, so Les Corbeaux, a corbeau is a crow. So the owner of this particular cafe had sort of taken in a crow as a pet. I think the crow had broken foot or a broken wing or something and could no longer fly. But crows are incredibly smart and clever and so this particular corbeau in the town of Chavignon was a mischievous crow. So they noticed that when they were sitting down, the owner, helpfully, put an electric fan near the door so that they could have fresh air and cool down a little bit. This crow couldn't fly, but was able to hop around pretty freely. And what was happening was the owner would get the fan going, serve, everything fine. This crow would hop over to the fan and take its beak and unplug that fan and then hop away, And then the room would quickly get hot, hotter. And this happened apparently over and over, and the owner was sort of exasperated. There he goes again, that damn crow. And, to plug it in, get the fan going, serve people. 10 minutes later, the crow was, pulling the plug out for that fan. And so little did anybody know that crow would end up in a song title. And so this is what the song sounds like. And actually, the song reflects the story. There's sort of stops and starts, and there are, exchanges between different sections of the band. There are some, I was able to take some little short drum solos in response to, Ed writes really kind of clever, fun to play arrangements. Sections of the band are always kind of in dialogue with each other. There's a lot of ear candy in this music. It's not just anything kind of rote or typical. It does tell the story through music. So this is how he did it. That's Gary Smillian, baritone, saxophone. Yeah, Le Corbeau. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. So could you notice now there were, these exchanges, right? The horns would play wild improvisation for, a couple of bars. Then drums, and then back to the horn. There were these. And so I was picturing that as like, the owner would plug in his fan, walk away, serve wine. The crow would come over, pull out the plug on the fan, chaos, and this thing happening over and over again. I think I don't know if Ed had that in mind, but that's my impression, what I get from it. It's almost like a slapstick, crazy scenario. Three Stooges, somebody says here. Yeah, exactly. So, yes, Dave.
Could I point out one thing?
Yes, sir.
We were talking about the chord sequence in the previous
Uh-huh.
So this tune is an example of what we call rhythm changes,
Ah, yes.
which changes meaning the sequence of chords
Yes.
that change bar to bar,
Yeah.
and rhythm referring to the tune,
I Got Rhythm.
George Gershwin tune, I Got Rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
So you could actually hum or sing the tune, I Got Rhythm, all the way through that.
So,
Same chord sequence.
thank you, Dave. So Dave Robinson says that this is for our virtual audience out on YouTube. The chord changes, the chord sequence that repeats over and over is identical to or similar to I Got Rhythm, the George Gershwin tune. And this has become a very standardized form in jazz. There are hundreds, if not thousands of tunes based on those chord changes. Is that a contrafact? Is that the word people, that's getting very academic.
Yes, that's the word.
I have a high school degree, so I never went to school for jazz. I learned jazz on the streets, like I learned at the Village Vanguard. And, jazz is really in the universities now. It is established in the colleges, and it's great. I think that's how the music is staying alive now. But when I came up, I just went to jazz clubs and listened to the great masters. And that was one of the great things growing up in New York, is that I could hop the suburban train and go, and in 45 minutes or an hour, I'm sitting next to Elvin Jones, or some incredible master musician right at my knee, at the Village Vanguard Jazz Club, and really absorbing, what's happening there. So, that was my education, really. I took private lessons from a lot of great drummers as well, but I also went to the great jazz clubs, and that was my main inspiration and education, honestly. So, I think at this point, let's take a little assessment here. Mark, do you think we have time for like one more tune, or shall we skip over to get on to our Q&A section? Somebody's saying a tune. A tune with a drum solo. Okay.
It's a drummer's date. I haven't heard a drum solo.
You know, I mean, I wanted to maybe mellow it down a little just because everything's been spirited, you know. But drum solo. Yeah. The drum solo, the lead song has some drum stuff. Okay, we'll finish with a bang. I'll play a tune that is a drum feature. It's a tune on, you know, another Ed Bonoff. Thank you. Ed Bonoff masterpiece called Meatloaf and Margot, or Margot? Margot the Wine, so Margot. And it's, I guess, one of Ed's favorite combinations of wine, you know, and a pairing, right, of meatloaf with Margot wine. And when we finished this recording, Ed was really grateful and really glad that, excuse me, I'm sorry. Whoops. Hello. Can we just hold for a little second? Just a little lower, if you don't mind. Yeah, thank you. When we finished this recording, Ed showed his gratitude to me by buying me a bottle of Margot wine, and you know, which is the inspiration for this song title. And it was a very good, rich, heavy, delicious red wine, and you know, but Ed was incredibly grateful and happy to have his music recorded well with a good band, and so, you know, that was, and he did show his appreciation very much, and he's so delighted over the whole thing that he wants to do another one, and so we're already in the process of planning another recording of Ed Bonoff's music. He has hundreds of compositions, and I think they should be recorded and put out into the world, and so that's going to be happening sometime this coming summer. All right, one more tune, Meatloaf and Margot drum solo feature with some other great solos happening as well. I'm going to make one more point. Does anybody notice the way the band is playing? Like, this is a New York record, okay? And what I mean by that is, it's not timid, you know. Like the way we are all playing is, forgive the crass reference, but it's balls, you know. Like we're really giving it all we got, and that's kind of a New York thing. Like there's no tentative, delicate, you know. I mean, on a ballad, we play very soft and sweet. On a romantic ballad, there are a few of those on the record, but the style is kind of gritty, you know, and I happen to enjoy that aspect of it. Just wondering if anybody noticed that, you know, that kind of conviction. You know, that's something that that's the way we like to do it up in New York. So, so all right, Meatloaf and Margot. Thank you. Thank you. So, a couple of points. If anybody noticed, like when I took a drum solo, it was a very prescribed amount of time, right? So, and I was playing on the form of the song. If anybody knows a little about jazz, there's always a chord structure that the horn players are blowing on. I'm also playing a drum solo over that chord structure. We don't usually have chords going behind a drum solo, although you can. But, I'm playing on the musical form always when I take a drum solo. And that's one of the sort of hallmarks of my hero inspirations. For example, Max Roach. Does anybody know that name? He was, one of the people who brought the drums as a almost like as a musical voice, as a lead voice, as a horn. When he took a solo, it was always musical and melodic. You can actually play little melodies on a set of drums. It's not the same as a piano or a saxophone, but it's melody. And people like Max Roach and Roy Haynes and so on, some of these other great heroes of jazz drumming, began that during the bebop era. Although there was some very musical drumming going way back to New Orleans and in the swing era as well of the 1930s and 40s. But that's where I'm coming from as a drummer. I believe drums should be always musical and are a musical instrument. So, that's just a little something. I don't know if anybody was paying attention to that particular aspect. Let me see if there's anything else. I think this may be a good time to, anybody want to just do a little, yes. It's a good time for yes. Yeah, thank you, Philip. Philip Dutton has a question, and then I'll sort of repeat it back for the virtual audience. Go ahead, Philip.
The process. So you had to contract with the musicians to be somewhere on a certain date and time. Did you practice? Did you rehearse beforehand and before you went into the studio? Or tell us a little bit about the process.
Great question. So Phil Dutton is asking, did we rehearse, and what was the preparation for this thing? Absolutely, yeah. We got together twice at Ed Bonoff's house in the New York suburbs, and that's very convenient because he has drums and piano, and he has all of his music and his arrangements in his home there. And so, yeah, we got together 2 times for about 3 hours each. And, by then the personnel was solid, and we had the same guys ready to go. And, yeah, and so... and those rehearsals made all the difference. This was music that you absolutely could not sight read. You could, but by the time we recorded, everybody knew it. I don't know if you can hear that, but everybody could really sink their teeth into this stuff by the time we recorded in the spring of 2024. Is that fairly answer your question? All right. Anybody else got a question? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mark. Brilliant, yes, brilliant question and brilliant retort from the peanut gallery in the front row. Kidding. Yeah, I'm going to make a declaration right here, right now. I would really love to bring this ensemble to the Mainstay. Yeah. Oh, wow. Investors, are you hearing this? It would not be, a cheap thing, inexpensive. It would be costly, but it's doable. And if sometime I know that 2026 is already getting booked, but 2026, 2027, if we could get a budget and a date, we could definitely perform this exact music right here on this stage, or even out on the backstage in the back. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thank you. Yeah, it's actually a dream of mine. I would really, Mark, really love to do that. So if we could get the conversation going on that, just in general with the board and with the fans here, and please, folks, if you love that idea, mention it to people associated with this wonderful place. And I just have to tell you that so far I've brought now about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 musicians down from New York, and they love coming here, and they love this room, and they love the audience here. It's a music audience and a music room, and musicians really appreciate that. We do so many gigs that are, either we're like musical wallpaper, or not all of us. I have to, and I don't mind. I don't mind playing background music, but this ain't no background music, and so, and it requires diligent rehearsal and preparation. But man, is it fun live. I really think we could just blow the roof off this place. Wouldn't it be fun? So, all right, the Ed Bonoff project live at the Mainstay. I'm liking that. Maybe even a live recording could come out of that. Ooh, thoughts, dreams. Thank you, Mark. What's that? Okay. Oh, yeah, there is a tip jar. If anybody has not, donated, we have to pay for the tech here and for, for me and for, and if you buy copious drinks and beverages at the bar, that helps to keep the lights on here. So support your Mainstay. I do whenever I can, and thank you. Thank you for that. Now, looking around, anybody have any? Oh, we've got a question over here. Dave Robinson, go ahead, man.
Did you use a copyist at all for this project?
Ed writes all of his own charts. Yeah. So, Ed is the copyist. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. However, we do have a project in mind where we want to take this music and make it, playable and accessible to others. And so the trombone player, John Fumasoli, is a pro copyist, and he does, the digital transcribing and all that stuff. So, I would love the idea of making this music available to, student ensembles or other professionals who want to play it. That idea is in the works, for sure, yeah. So far, Ed's music has only been played within Ed's sphere, pardon me, and within, and by the way, Ed runs a weekly rehearsal band for about the past 50 years. Yeah, that's where I got to know him during my high school days. That rehearsal band was meeting every Tuesday night. Back then, he called it the Rhythm Devils, and they were playing, a lot of it was traditional kind of older style New Orleans type jazz, and then he infused it more and more with like bebop, and this music is not really categorizable, by the way. A lot of times you can put music into like a neat category. It's a mishmash, right? Would you say, Dave? It's a jumble of stuff. A mishmash and a jumble. Those are academic terms that we use in the education world. Anyway, yeah. I'm looking for hands. Oh, yes. Oh, good. Wow. So in other words, like with the COVID and so on? Huh. So Laura is asking, did anyone, have to battle illness or like, were we dealing with any? Well, COVID was pretty much done by the time we did this, and so that was less of an issue. And, all our guys are strictly immunized and vaccinated. Like everybody that we are involved with, anybody in Ed's band is going to have the shots, because, some of the folks in the project are older. Yeah, thank you. We can applaud vaccines. I mean, they're lifesavers, man. Nurses. My wife is a nurse, man. I'm all for, proper, yes, God bless you and thank you, Yeah, no, we were really responsible about that, and, anyone who goes to Ed's is vaccinated and, really, really diligent about that stuff. But on the day of the recording session, well, it was a nasty day. I mean, it was February, I believe, 2024, and there was one of these deluge, New York area rainfalls of crazy proportions. Like, I mean, heavy rain and all day and all night, I was even worried about Ed and his wife driving, the hour or whatever it was upstate. So the recording was made in a town called Paterson, New York, about an hour and a half north of New York City. And yeah, it was crazy weather, but you know they got there and they drove and they were there through the whole thing. So show of hands. Philip got another one. Yes, sir. Great question. And this is something there should be more of a conversation about this. So Phil is asking, how did we handle the money part? And you know, this is a dicey area for me. I mean, everybody did rehearse for free. Well, I paid a few of the guys who had long drives. I gave gas money, but you know, I'm pretty big on paying people what they should get and as much as I can. I paid for this thing. I got some donations from a few, you know, friends who are well off. I took a little money that, you know, that my mom left for me. I took some savings. Like, I mean, you know, I take risks when I do these things, you know. My first line of action was to try to get a record company. You know, I proposed it to a couple of record labels, but it was kind of like, who's Greg Burrows? And you know, it's not going to make us any money and it's not going to sell. And maybe that's true, you know, but I do want this thing to have a return. I don't know what that's all going to be yet. So the payment was for the record date. So for the 5 hours, 6 hours in the recording studio, I gave everybody a flat fee for being in the studio all day. And the rehearsal thing was kind of on an individual basis. Ed gave his arrangements without a fee. I mean, he could have, you know, he will get some sort of residuals for this through ASCAP. But, you know, at first he almost sort of didn't care about that aspect. I said, Ed, please, you've got to be, your publishing stuff has to be in a row. So we actually spent a lot of time kind of getting the publishing stuff in a row, the paperwork. This was a challenge that I encountered. Okay, so on this recording is a Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn medley. Okay, musicians who plan to record, don't record a medley made or composed by famous, you know. Well, not only do you have to pay, but yeah, and I thought most of the tunes Ed rearranged with Ellington are 100 years old, just about. Like, I thought some of this stuff would be public domain by now. Well, none of it was. You know, the Ellington estate, and they should, by the way, the Ellington estate diligently have renewed their copyrights on everything that Duke Ellington composed, and I think that should be that way. I don't believe in stealing free music all the time, and so. Yeah, I did all that process. I used an organization called Easy Songs, and I had to pay like a $300 kind of membership fee, and then gave them the songs, how long did we use lyrics, and all this stuff. But there's something about when you do a medley, it's some extra nonsense. It's really complex, and they charge more for a medley for some reason, and you know, I'm never going to do another medley ever again. But on the plus side, if you listen to the recording, whether you buy the CD today, and we do have more copies, by the way, $15, buy a CD, please. And eventually the vinyl will be available too. But however you consume this music, there is a Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn medley, and it's glorious. Ed did a beautiful, simple, basic kind of treatment of it. It's so sweet and romantic. It's warm music, and you know, that tune is getting a little bit on the radio, actually. I thought some of the other tunes would be, you know, kind of radio friendly, but quite a few radio hosts are choosing the Ellington Strayhorn medley, so I'm glad I got it all covered. I won't end up in court, you know, stealing the music. I see a hand back there. Do I? Yes. great question. So, Greg back there, as his name happens to be, is asking me who are my earlier influences. I mean, I have many, many influences. Even as a kid, I was getting into jazz. I went to the library and I listened to a lot of old jazz records. But my real thing when I was, 11 or 10, I listened to Ginger Baker, Cream, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce. That's a really powerful group, and they are sort of a little bit jazz related. I was into Jimi Hendrix. I was into that kind of psychedelic '60s stuff, which a lot of it is related to blues and jazz, as it happens. But other than that, I listen to everything. I will listen to. I'll listen to the radio. I like kind of soft ballads. I like rock and roll. I like classical of all kinds. I pull influences from absolutely everywhere. But as a kid, it was, kind of psychedelic rock and roll. And I have played that kind of music, with bands and things like that. I've also played a lot of Brazilian music, which fortunately for me enabled me to do a nice gig with Chuck Red here about a year ago, where we did an evening of Brazilian music. That was not the fundraising gala a few months ago. That was wonderful. That was with some real top New York Brazilian people. But I did an evening of bossa nova with Chuck Red and his brother Robert and Amy Shook on the bass. We had a ball. So Brazilian music is a big part of what I do, and there is a Brazilian bossa nova on this record called Let's Not Wait. There is a funny story about that title. Anybody want to hear a quick one about that? Yeah, so Let's Not Wait, which happens to be the album title too, right? So one day we were at Ed's doing his Tuesday night rehearsal band, and that tune Let's Not Wait came up. I've played a lot of these songs for many years, actually. So one night this tune came up, and somebody in the group in the room said, "Ed, let's not wait. What are you referring to? Let's not wait for what?" And Ed said, "Boop." I had to bleep that out. Let's say it was a romantic title, very romantic, right? So so I guess sometimes people think, people of different generations, they lose the interest in all that. Well, they don't, okay? Thank God we don't lose interest in sex. But, but he was, it was a funny moment. I guess you had to be there. I don't know. That wasn't so funny, was it? No, but it was just, let's not wait. Let's not wait for what? Well, because if you meet a new partner in your life and things are going good and, how long do you want to wait? Let's go, That's kind of what Let's Not Wait refers to in the song title. And it happens to be a very romantic, to me, it's one of the most beautiful songs on the record. It's got a gorgeous melody and this lilting bossa nova rhythm, which I added a lot of percussion. That is one overdub I did. I added percussion to the song Let's Not Wait. I spent a few hours at the studio on that, playing some shakers and Brazilian percussion. It adds a nice flavor. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, I can see how one might come up with that. Let's not wait on a project like this, because none of us are going to be around forever, especially the veteran senior members among us. Let's not wait. Let's record it. Let's do it. Let's do this music. I think that's sort of, bundled into the meaning of the album title, I would say. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions about the recording, the music, the project? Anybody out there? I guess you're welcome. You're welcome, folks. Here comes Mark Einstein for a closing statement. I want to thank you all so much for coming and for appreciating this music and for supporting it. And let's not wait. Let's do it again. All right. Thanks, everybody. Watch the deer. Get home safe.